Hi everybody, welcome to this Zoom presentation. Given the circumstances, you've got two choices at the moment. We either do something along these lines or we don't do anything because the choices have been taken away from us. And this is deemed not a bad second best to a true meeting. I mean, all the orchid societies are in the same boat, obviously meeting in person in a building. It's just a no-no at the moment. We don't know how long that's going to last. So in the meantime, committees have got together and decided to at least do something. And the idea is that we have some sort of presentation probably on the same day as the meeting might have been, had we been on our normal schedules. Various people will do various types of presentations. My format is video. For those of you who don't know, I run a YouTube channel, so I'm producing videos all the time. This is what I do, second nature to me. And I feel personally that the interaction of a video presentation compared with stills, a sequence of photos, to me this is more personal. It's more, hi, how are you, shake hands type thing. So this is my idea. And this particular presentation is going to be very loosely centred around a sort of day in the life of me. You know, what do I get up to on a daily basis? Well, the first important thing is to actually get up. Despite the circumstances and the temptation, we do like to get up every day, yeah? And get some stuff done. I mean, this is my orchid grow space. I try not to break my neck over the things on the floor. It's a converted conservatory. I've got a bit less than 200 orchids in here, of heading up around 25 genera. I centre around, I could say I've got more Oncidiums than a lot of others, and more Dendrobiums than anything. A fair few in the Cattleya Alliance, Cattleya, Lalias, and some oddities, a couple of Renantheras, a couple of Vandas, a couple of Coelogenes. So there are some odd ones, some Merengus. And I've also got some one-offs, you know. I've got one one-off that I can only have that one, because it is the only one. It's the only actual species in that genus. So it's a variety in here that's been collected over a long period of time. Gradually built up. Some come and go. We must accept that at the end of the day, us orchid growers. I remember asking a very senior learned orchid gentleman once at an orchid society meeting. I said, how do you know when you're not a beginner anymore? Is it because you stopped killing orchids? And he sort of stepped back and he went, no, 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 no. You never stop killing orchids. I was expecting some, you know, elaborate sort of, you know, oh no, you never stop killing orchids. And it's probably true. We lose an orchid now and again. I think the idea is that as you get more experienced, you at least know why and don't do it again. That's the idea. That's where the experience comes in. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're liable to get the same results. If those results aren't good, change something, you know. So yeah, we sort of do a day in the life, and life for me begins very early. That's something I can't change, I'm afraid. That's just how I am. My body clock says sometime after 5 o'clock it's time you got your whatnot out of bed, and so I do. So there's a fly annoying me. There was a fly annoying me. Gone now. I get up, I feed the cats. If you don't feed the cats first thing, they'll get under your feet, trip you over, break your flipping neck. Get myself a coffee and sit down at the computer. Because I run a YouTube channel and I post a video most days, when I get up in the morning, there's a whole set of comments that people have left for me to read and answer. I think it's polite to answer my comments on my channel. So people leave a comment, even if it's great video, I'll say thanks. Yeah? Just simple politeness, in my opinion. But that can take quite a while depending on how many comments there are. And some of them are questions, which might mean I've got to go and look something up, which I'm prepared to do. So it can be a questions and answers session. Okay, this next set of little clips into the video, this is a sort of day in the life, the sort of things I get up to during the day. So these clips are actually recorded off of my laptop screen. So they're certainly not the sort of quality you're getting now from my rather expensive video camera, but nonetheless they're little chores, but not chores, jobs we'll call them, that often need doing every single day. So we'll just have a chat through those. Okay, everybody documents. We all do a bit. Let's just make this bigger so you can see it. Basically, I keep notes. I've got 3 columns on the left. This is just a very simple spreadsheet. That allows me to make notes. I've got certain orchids that take part in videos throughout the year. I follow their progress. They're called project orchids. I mark those so that I can find them easily. Then basically we've got the genus name, and then we've got whatever it's called, the species or hybrid name. I keep track of when something last bloomed, which I find useful. I lost all my notes a while back, so these are not as detailed as they used to be. I used to keep a history of 3 bloomings. Basically, it's nice to know, and if it's an annual bloomer, it's nice to know roughly when it's going to come out. I keep information as to where I got it from and when. Some of that information got lost. Basically, my laptop crashed and I lost my notes, but some of it was managed to be recovered, but not all. I keep my repotting date it last got repotted. In addition to that, I use colour coding down there. So if the colour's in brown, that's a mounted orchid. If it's in black, it's a potted orchid. And if it's in this greeny bluey colour, it means it's in a wholly clay pot. So I differentiate the types. That helps me when I'm marking my watering details, which I put in at individual plant level. So you can see some of the mounts were on this particular spreadsheet. That particular mount wasn't actually watered because the latest watering for my mounts was on the 4th of the 1st when they got flushed. Yeah, so you see 4th of the 1st down through here. That one didn't get done because that's resting, so it doesn't get watered as often. And then over on the far right, I keep some basic notes on repotting details, things like medium or anything special about them. I normally only update these when I repot, so I'll say something like repotted in medium bark, sponge rock and charcoal, so that was a mix. This is a large split with 4 new growths pushing on, roots not too bad. So it's just a general view of what it was like last time it was potted. There are some oddities in here, like you can see on this particular plant. Split and mounted with some surface live moss on top of normal moss. Roots not too good. Fusarium still showing on older parts. When this plant was bought, it had Fusarium. It was treated with systemic fungicide treatments, plural, with an S on the end, and the new growths are growing clean. But obviously the older parts of the plant, you don't ever lose it. You can kill it off, yeah, and stop it spreading, but you know it's still there. And it's still doing whatever damage it was doing in that older part of the plant, which stops the flow of nutrients and hydration and, stalls the plant, basically. It just slows it right up. And if left unattended, in some cases, will kill the plant. So you need to go steady with that one. It's a lot of people have got that and don't know it. It's around. Trust me, it's around. It can even come from, decent nurseries will still sell you a plant with that. Normally because it's come from somewhere else. Anyway, those are my notes, and I update them quite frequently. Let's go back to my normal size, somewhere about there. And basically I keep all my orchids are in here. They're in sets, so they've got a heading: Bulbophyllums, Cattleya Alliance, Cotylogenes, Dendrobiums. I've got so many Dendrobiums, I've split them up into subsets: winter resting types, nobly types, black hair types, Latoria types, Phalaenopsis types, others. There's always an others, isn't there, that don't fit anywhere else. Masdevallias and Draculas, Miltonias, Miltoniopsis, Oncidium Alliance, That's your standard Oncidiums plus mainly into generics in that section. My Tolumnias, I've got quite a few of those. I like those. A couple of Paphiopedilums, I'm not very good with those. A few Phalaenopsis that just don't grow very good in the grow room. But you can see these are marked house. These are actually growing in the house. They're not in the grow room. Some Vandaceous types. I've got some Arengis, some Sarcochilis, Renantheras, a couple. Some actual Vandas. And then a few oddities at the end. And then I keep a set of generalised notes, like my mounts when they last had something done to them, holy clay pots, other pots, cooler, shadier pots. That's things like my Masdevallias, Restrepias and Draculas. They get watered on a different cycle, even though they're in normal pots. Any treatments I've done, like treatment for scale, if I treat the whole place with a fungicide, that sort of detail. And I keep details of when shade netting goes on and comes off, and when I set the heater up, things like that. It gives me a reminder for things like annual events. It's an annual event to set up the heater for the winter and then take it down again, in late spring. So that's my notes. That's the sort of thing I do. That gets updated when I do something. So it's not daily, but nonetheless, it gets updated as and when. Something else I do every day is deal with my YouTube channel. I have a look at my statistics. This basically lists all my videos, and the bottom left there with their little thumbnails, the date they were published, and how many views I've had in the... this is dynamic, so this basically shows the views I've had in the last 48 hours and in the last 60 minutes. So I get a basic... online updating of what's going on with my videos over the previous periods. And then I go over to this tab where I've got all my comments. The comment is by video, so I can tell which video the comment is against by the picture on the right hand side. These comments have all been dealt with because these are today's. But it's just a matter of scrolling down, and dealing with my comments. So that's something else I do every day. And the other thing I do every day is my YouTube, my Facebook group. All right. Which we'll have a very quick look at because some of you might be interested in joining. Okay, so my Facebook group, which as I said, it is a private membership group, is called Roger's Orchids. You can search Facebook and find it. And if you try and join, you'll be asked a question which you need to answer, or you won't get a look in. And this is basically all the stuff that goes on here. People post pictures of their orchids, ask questions, people comment on the orchids. As I say, I do very little apart from put the posts up. At the moment, there are 2 pending posts. I'll do those while I'm here, logged in. Somebody's posting some pictures of some orchids. And so is somebody else. So all I do is approve them. Yeah, that's it. Job done. The only thing I do is to be polite. I then actually go and like them. So I just go and like them just to show that I've seen them. They're acknowledged. So that's something else I do. And I have a look at my Facebook group several times a day. Otherwise, the posts build up and then they all get posted at once. And it might be a bit too much for people to be expected to watch that, to look at and read all that sort of stuff. I do post myself now and again. I mean, these are some pictures I posted a while ago, quite a while ago actually. And it was just because the sun was filtering in through the shade netting and some of the blooms look quite attractive in the sun. So I do post now and again. Something else I do is I keep photographic records of a selected set of plants at frequencies throughout the year. These end up embedded into videos for those sets of plants. This is useful, quite honestly. This is quite a good way of documenting the progress or not of your plants, is to actually keep photographic records. Especially when you've got something like a monster like this one. This is a very large plant. It grows incredibly well for me, and so far it hasn't bloomed. Well, I've always said if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, chances are you'll get the same results. So having done a bit of work, this is Dendrobium chryseum. Unusual. I don't know anybody else that's got this one. Um, but basically it's grown into a monster, but it won't bloom. So having done a little bit of research, this one comes from an area where it gets pretty cold in the winter. And it's a drier period. Um, Many dendrobiums come from an area that is drier in winter, wet season, dry season, all that sort of stuff. But this one comes from areas where it can get pretty cold in the winter. So that's the only thing I can think to change. It gets good light, but in the winter time when it's its drier season, it's not getting temperatures as low as it ought to have. So we're into January now. Once we get into the second or third week of January, when it's safe to do so, in other words, not sub-zero, this one's going to spend some time outside. Obviously, I take the risk of bugs, slugs and snails, but I'll try and hang it in a place where it's isolated. Keep it out of direct sun, although winter sun probably wouldn't hurt it. But basically, I'm going to chill the thing down because it's the only thing I haven't tried, if you see what I mean. And who knows, it might work. If it doesn't work, then this plant will be off to somebody else to have a go, because I can see no point in a plant that takes up that amount of room if it's not going to bloom. To me, there's no point in having an orchid if it doesn't bloom. It doesn't matter how pretty the leaves are. But yeah, this is a bit of a monster. It needs to bloom, and I'm going to try giving it a really good chill towards the end of the winter. It can stay outside as long as the temperatures sort of stay above 7-8 degrees. I'm not going to let it get any colder than that. But in the grow room, it's only going down to 15. And looking at the areas it comes from, it gets down quite a bit lower than that pretty frequently. So yeah, that's another thing that I do is keep records of selected plants over a period of time, and then incorporate those photographs into videos as the year progresses. And then at the end of the year, what I do is I bring them all together, and we have a look at the stills taken, in sort of like March, June, September, and then again look at the plants in video form in December. And I talk through their progress through a growing season. And each year we select a different set of plants. Next thing on my mind is here. What have I got to do out here? And that varies dramatically depending on time of year. This time of year, next to nothing. Literally. My potted orchids, I've got two types of pots, the ordinary plastic pots and my holy clay pots, these types of things. I use these for stuff that need a very wet-dry cycle, like Cattleya types. Normally got large bark in them, chunky bark, and nothing else, and they live quite happily in there. Those get watered on a certain frequency, which this time of year is about every 5 or 6 days. The pots hold water, the bark holds some water, so they take a day or two to dry out, and at this time of year in the lower temperatures they don't need lots of water, and they certainly don't need much feed because they're not growing that often. So not so much to do. My other pots, my plastic pots, they have a mixture of medias. It varies a lot. I use cocoa husk, I use charcoal, I use the bark from Burnham's. I've stopped using Orchiata bark. I don't even think you can get it anymore. But I quite like the bark from Burnham's, and also from one of the online sellers, UK seller. So bark, charcoal. I've got some sponge rock, giant perlite that came from the States because you can't get it here. Peter White was the only one who sold that, and he stopped getting it when they demanded that it could only be exported by the pallet or something stupid. And he said he'd be dead before he could sell it all, so he stopped getting it. Why that's got a restriction on it, I really don't know. Perlite is perlite, whether it's big bits or little bits. What's the problem here? Somebody's made up some sort of regulations there that are just beyond my little mind. Anyway, so various medias, and depending on the media used will depend how quickly the pot's dry. So the frequency of water this time of year, bearing in mind lower temperatures, very short day lengths, stuff isn't growing much. If it isn't growing much, it doesn't need a lot of water and feed. It's as simple as that. And certainly for some plants, if you stonk up the watering in those lower temperatures and short days, you'll just rot the roots. So it's everything's easy going at the moment. I've got a lot of mounted orchids, and I mean a lot. They vary. They vary from Oncidium types. I mean, that's a named twinkle. I've got a lot of mounted orchids. I like them like this. It's virtually impossible to give that too much water. It's just not possible. Literally, I mean, this has got some live moss on it that's got hold. It's managed to take okay on the mount, and most of the roots are in under that moss, so when it's watered the moss stays damp for a while, but it dries an awful lot quicker than a pot would. So I don't like the expression overwatering, because strictly speaking you can't overwater something. You either water it or you don't, but what you can do is water it too often, and that way it doesn't dry out, and the media or whatever will start going soggy, and then you get the root rot. That's virtually impossible on the mount, so I've got a lot of stuff on mounts from Oncidium type, some of which get quite large, like this. That is a tiny twinkle. It's nothing to do with its size, that's actually its name. And that, if you try and count the number of bulbs on there, you'll be there a while. I'm not doing it, but yeah, they can stay on there until they hang off the edge. Quite honestly, they'll just carry on growing and spreading and getting larger and larger. Oh, fragrance on that is gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then an awful lot of my dendrobiums are mounted. I've even got a little Bulbophyllum on a mount. It's a little species, Pumilio, I think that is. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 new growths coming on it. Unfortunately, they're at different stages. Some are relatively new, and some are maturing their leaf, which means they're going to bloom at different times, which is a shame. I'd love to get a mass blooming on that, but relatively it's a young plant. I mean, I've only had it a couple of years, but it's taking off now, and it likes the mount. It likes it like that. What it probably doesn't like being a Bulbophyllum is the amount of time it stays dry between waterings, especially this time of year. But I'm not doing separate watering for individual plants. I either water my mounts or I don't, the exception being the winter resting types, which they'll miss out several watering runs because they don't need any. They need that dry spell, so different things. So yeah, there's a variety. I mean, that's a, strictly speaking, I call it a Laelia, but it's actually a Laelia crossed with a Broughtonia, and that's actually Joyce Hamilton. It's a registered name. Just coming into bloom at the moment. You can see the Laelia in it. long flower spikes, but that's going to have a nice lot of blooms. But again, it will be staggered. First to open, second to open, third, fourth. So it'll be over in bloom for a period of time. But again, that's happy on its mount. The moss has taken, and to me, it just looks natural. That's how our epiphytic orchids would be growing in the wild, on a branch, on a tree trunk, growing away nicely. So lots of mounted orchids. Some of them get a bit big for mounts. Oh, let's get that one down. One monster. Now this is Dendrobium hercoglossum. One of my favourite dendrobium blooms, and as far as looking after this one is concerned, it's a one-off. I haven't got any others that grow like this one, and I don't grow it like it says I should, because I don't take any notice of ancient scrolls and writings from 50 years ago. I'd rather look up the real weather conditions where this grows, modern information, yeah. But the thing is with this one, it took me quite a long time to work out how it wanted to grow. Not how I wanted to grow it, how it wanted to grow. And it just grows odd. What you've got here is the old canes down the bottom, many of which are leafless and will actually get cut off soon. But then what you've got is 2-year-old canes around here, yeah? Then you've also got last year's growths. This year's growths haven't started yet. After all, it is only January. But this is the thing with this one. Last year's growths are now in the middle of winter. They're still growing. They are still producing new leaves on the ends of the canes. So they're growing through the winter. These are the year before's canes. They're still growing. So they've grown through their first season, through their first winter, through their second season, and they're still pushing out some new leaves in places in their second winter. They will stop growing soon. But because they continue to grow through the winter, they get longer and longer. And then eventually the weight of them starts to pull them down. They become semi-pendulous, followed by pendulous. And the latest set of growths will follow over the top like a cascade. And so it continues. And this has a magnificent mass blooming. I'll see if I can find a photo. And that's won quite a few firsts at various places. Trouble is, the mass blooming is relatively short-lived, but it does have sporadic blooms throughout the growing season. But that's getting big. Notice how big the mount is. I'm holding it in one hand. It's a mass of roots, including round the back of the mount, and it's happy. And there's hardly any moss on that mount, which means the roots get absolutely soaked, and then they dry. And in the summer, daily watering to keep that growing, and an amount of feed. I don't feed high, I feed low and often. And in the summertime with things like this, virtually every watering. But I do still do the normal thing and actually flush now and again, make sure there's no build-ups. We don't want any of that nonsense. So that's enough of this type of presentation. I've got some video clips from the past which I'll include, and I will take the camera down and we'll have a look at just the basic kit that I've got in here that keeps this place going for me and removes the need for me to be here all the time, except for watering. I've got no automation as far as watering is concerned because of what goes on in here. I can't have sprinklers or sprayers or anything like here. Because it's a confined space, I'd hit the electrics basically. And they're not the totally waterproof sort of really expensive ones. And also I think if you're watering automatically, you're not looking at your plants very often, and that's how you can get outbreaks of bugs. You could get some rot set in that you haven't spotted quick enough and it'll take the plant down. So I like to actually handle my plants, and that's how I water my plants. When it's really, really hot in the summer, like we've had 2 summers now going back, we've had heat waves, so we've had prolonged hot weather over a long period of time. I do get the sprayer out for the mounts. Because basically I may water them in the morning, but they need a top up. Yeah, so I'll get the sprayer out and sort of spray over the mounts. Now I try and keep my plants dry, but when that amount of heat's around, with the amount of circulation I've got, if some water gets on the plants, it's dry before it can do any harm basically. And the water I'm using is RO water, it's pure, so I'm not introducing pathogens and spores and all sorts of things that you can get in certain other types of water, especially if it's sat in a barrel for months and months and months and months on end and it's not sealed. You're going to get wildlife in there. So I use RO water, which is pure. Which means if I get the plants wet, it's not so bad. But there's a difference. I mean, some people say, oh, don't get your plants wet when it's sunny because you'll burn the leaves. No, you won't. Think about it. If that was true, every plant outside would have all burn spots on it, wouldn't it? Because it rains and the sun comes out. The difference is that rain's pretty pure when it comes out of the sky. Might not stay like that too long, but... So, clean water on leaves is okay. Where you will start getting problems though is if you're spraying your plants and you've got feeds and fertilizers and other things in the water. Those chemicals in the water can start causing problems with sunspots. Well, that's what I call them. They're little burn marks basically. sunspots. Anyway, let's get the camera down and get some other clips added in, and we'll see where we go. But day in the life, some of it is out here. In the summer, something goes on out here every single day. Doesn't go on all day though. I mean, even in the summer I can get away with an hour out here. I'm retired now. That hour is not begrudged ever. This is my main hobby. It's what I enjoy alongside my YouTube channel, which is talking about it, filming it, and using that online mechanism, which is the sort of thing we're doing now. Right, let's cut this bit off and then we'll move on to something else. Okay, we're mobile now, so camera's handheld, so there'll be a bit of wobbling going on, but I've been doing it a while. It doesn't wobble about too much. So we just have a look round at how the place is arranged. First of all, light aspects, which is very important. If you grow in the home, you obviously know the difference between a south-facing window and a north-facing window, for example. But if you've got a building or a structure that is outside, it's still subject to the aspect of the sun. Now I face directly southwest here, so obviously this is southeast, and I've got a two-storey house sticking up in the air, and the sun comes over the top. Now in the winter it comes over the top down here somewhere, yeah, and it comes round here and it sets in between those two houses over the road. That's winter time. Obviously in the summer it's much higher in the sky and it sets over there. Well, that's timber on that side, so I don't worry about having to shade or anything down here. Now this time of year in here, it is January after all, there's no shade netting on the roof, there's no shade netting on here. The reason being, the sun is low in the sky, and as you can see through the window, there's a massive birch tree out there, far too big for a housing estate, and those twigs dapple the sun quite dramatically, and the sun is behind that tree, and when it comes out the end it's already starting to go orange and set. It's got no strength whatsoever, so that's why this is open here. And because it's low in the sky and not coming directly through the roof, no shade netting on the roof. I do however have a layer of shade netting here, because when the sun comes over the house it's at its highest. So even though it's winter sun, it's at its maximum strength, although that is still weak. But nonetheless, there are some plants in here that level of sun through glass would be a bit too much. You start getting pale leaves and stuff, especially on some of the Oncidium types and things like that. So that's how it works this time of year. In the summertime, the sun comes over the house up there and literally goes across and then round there. So most of my light's coming in the roof at that time of year. So I control light in here by placement. Obviously, you know, plants down here are getting an awful lot of shade from plants above them. Plants on the top shelves are getting the most light. Next shelf down, a bit less. Yeah? But in the winter time, that shelf doesn't get a huge amount more light than that shelf, because the light's coming in from the side, not from above. Yeah? So light changes, and I place plants according to their light requirements by positioning them in different places. The closer to the glass, certainly in the winter time, this time of year, the brighter the light. The farther away from the glass, less light. Lower shelf, less light. And then we get up into the really high light positions, hang them in the roof and get as close to the roof as possible. But in the winter time, I have to lower them down on those racks because the sun's coming in from the side, not the roof. And I've got a lot of timber up round where the roof joins the sides. So if they're up near the roof, they don't get as much light as if they're lower down because it's coming in from the side at an angle. So I move things around according to light requirements. Humidity, it's the same. Obviously with circulating fans it's the same, isn't it? You know, whatever humidity I've got. Now I used to use domestic humidifiers, you know, room humidifiers, and I used to have 3 on the go in here, and I used to have to fill them up every single day, and in my mind a humidifier that's going to produce a mist that goes onto the plants needs to use pure water. If you stick the tap water in your humidifier, all that calcium carbonate that furs up your kettle has got to go somewhere. So you will start getting a film on your leaves, and that will stop them breathing properly and also shut the light down a bit, so the photosynthesis won't be quite as good. So it's better to use pure water in your humidifiers. But basically those 3 units did not make it. They you know, I was down 60, almost down 55 sometimes in hot weather, and they were going flat out all day. So they didn't work. So I ended up getting one of these, which is a little bit more industrial. And quite honestly, since I got this, I don't get humidity problems now. It's got a small reservoir in the bottom. This is centrifugal, so it works on a high-speed fan that whisks up the water and chucks it out the top as a mist. It's shut down for the winter. I don't need extra humidity out here this time of year. It stays, I mean, overnight it goes up to almost 100% when the temperature drops down. Anyway, since I got this unit, I don't get problems, but I did have to do a modification. It's got a water inlet that you could use an outlet from your mains, basically, to keep that little reservoir in the bottom topped up. But what I decided to do was get a header tank. So I just bought a plastic container. It's got polythene on it to stop algae forming, basically. And basically I keep that topped up with RO water, and it works on a siphon. So it's siphonic. So, you know, like you used to get the petrol out of cars when you were young, allegedly. But basically, you know, you just get the water flowing, and once that pipe's full of water, it stays full of water, and the humidifier just takes what it needs. And I keep this topped up with RO water. And that saves me messing about every single day. Getting down there is okay, but at my age, getting up again is not so quick. Ow. Right, so that's humidity. Dotted around the place are some little 6-inch, well actually I think they're 5-inch, computer fans that run on 12 volts. So basically I've got a phone charger, which I cut the plug off the end, and I've wired in these little fans. They keep the air very gently moving 24/7. Big stuff over here. I've got 2 oscillating, circulating fans up here, and at the moment the top one is wired in with my little heater that's got its own thermostat, which is naff. It's accurate to about 10 degrees. Yeah, well, you need it a bit better than that, don't you? So what have I done is I've wired that circulating fan and my little heater together and put them on one of these little units. These are pretty good value for money. They are supposed to be waterproof or spray proof, but I wouldn't risk it. I keep my electrics dry because I don't have water flying around all over the place. If I used a sprayer, then I wouldn't be using it on a plant directly above that. I keep things dry. But basically these are quite easy to use units, and this one does both. It's got effectively a double socket down here. One of them's for heating and one of them's for cooling. So you can have heating and cooling going at the same time. Yeah? So you could have your minimum winter nighttime temperature with the heater, and then you could have perhaps circulating cooling fans coming on when the temperature gets up to a certain amount during the day, and run them both. However, these are not ridiculously expensive units. They do have a maximum throughput. If you overload them, you might start getting damage. So I wouldn't load them up too much. I'm happy with the heater and the fan, and nothing gets warm. No warm wires, no warm plugs. So it's okay at that level. So, and the humidifier that I showed you earlier uses another one, turned off at the moment, but this is a humidistat. So basically I set, you know, a minimum and a maximum level on there. When the humidity drops down below, this thing kicks in and turns it on. When it gets up to a level chosen by me, it shuts down. Very simple gadgets that mean my heating, my air circulation and my humidifying is automated. that's basically all that's automated out here, except in the summer. Come the spring, tucked away behind there, neatly bubble wrapped at the moment, or relatively neatly, is an extractor fan. Now that removes hot air from near the top of the building. And then down there, sorry if you're getting seasick, is its partner in crime, an inlet fan on the shady side, as low down as I can get it. They work as a pair, and again, they run off a little thermostat over there. So again, when the temperature reaches a certain height, certain level, that kicks on, switches on the extractor, and the inlet fan, which changes the air very quickly, it's quite powerful, the pair of them working together, and then when the temperature drops back down again, they shut off. Now, unfortunately, when we're in a heat wave, the air coming in is warmer than I want it. And it's potentially, they stay on all day until it cools down a bit in the evening. Nothing's perfect, but that's about as good as I can get it anyway. So that's my basic kit. We don't look at my electrics because they're atrocious, but they're I know where they are and I don't get anything wet. So I'm okay with my electrics. But as I say, I don't splash water around in here. The water that goes in here either goes on the floor, which I do in the summer. It is a concrete floor, and I'm quite happy to chuck a lot of water on the floor in the summer to aid the humidity, especially in the hotter weather. So I do that. So that's basically how the place runs. The idea of variable lighting by positioning, shading adjusted depending on the time of year. That all goes on the outside, and in the summertime when we've got the warmest weather, there's a double layer of shading on both of these and the roof. Yeah, it helps keep the heat down a bit, and also the intense light directly through the glass. So that's the kit. Okay, hope you've enjoyed an amble around my grow space. We've had a look at some of the kit and a few of the plants, but I wanted this to be more about the life of an orchid grower rather than just the orchids, if you see what I mean. There's more than enough around of just looking at orchids. That's just the normal thing. So I just wanted to do something a bit different, as it's a Zoom presentation, and for many of you it may be the first one you've ever attended. So I wanted to make it different, if you see what I mean. So this is what we've tried to do. I'd like to wish you all the best for 2021, and I think I can safely assure the majority of you it certainly ain't going to be as bad as 2020. We have hope now. You know, we're all going to have holes in our arms soon. Some of you may already have had some. This is good stuff. So I will emphasize the point: don't be stupid, stay safe, stay at home. Once the protection is out there, then you can go skinny dipping down the beach. Then you can go abseiling down the rocks with all your mates and go up the disco and give it all that. But not now. Please look after yourselves. We've already lost one of our orchid friends to the dreaded disease. Let's keep that number the same. Let's not add to it. So stay safe, look after yourselves, and of course, look after your orchids, because you've got plenty of time to do it nowadays, haven't you? Okay, thanks for listening, and me waffling away and having a look around some of my grow space and some of the things I get up to on the computer. And I'm now going to hand the control back to Tricia, who will take over the meeting again, and I'm sure some other committee members may be wanting to say a few words, like Lynn perhaps, and maybe some of the others. Hope you've enjoyed it, and back to Trish. Thanks for being around.